Hello and welcome to DFW. We're at Terminal E, and this is the remote terminal that a lot of like regional jets use, and we are in a Bombardier CRJ 700. Let me open the door. So I thought it would be kind of cool if we went to College Station, which is where I will be studying. This is not very far away from my home, so this is my home airport in Dallas. And I have taken this flight, actually. It's really weird. It's incredibly short, even for a regional jet. You feel like you're in the air for less time than you are when you're sitting on the ground waiting to push back and taxi, and suddenly you're in College Station. So it's also got a really weird flight plan. I'll show you guys what we're planning on doing here. We are sitting here at Terminal E. We're going to take Kilo 11, left Lima, and then we're going to use this Echo Hotel to get onto runway 17 right. We're going to take off over here. Then we're going to go from runway 17 right, heading 176 at 1,120 feet. We're going to head towards Trex at 5,000 feet or above, 240 knots or below. Dalby, Neeps to Ardia with this Ardia 7 departure. Now this departure, this is just a standard instrument departure. It actually takes us to College Station, and normally other planes would go from there to their first waypoint, but that actually is our destination. So the departure takes us all the way where we need to be. This has more information. This is basically what I just said. Take off runways 17 center and 17 right. Climb on heading 176 to 1120 feet. Then direct Trex, cross Trex at or above 5,000 and at or below 240 knots. Then on track 153 to Dalby, then on track 170 to cross Neeps at or above 10,000 feet, then on depicted route to Ardia, then maintain 10,000 feet, expect filed altitude 10 minutes after departure. We aren't going to be doing that because that is our destination. So what I will do right now is actually we're going to set our heading to 176, we'll just get that out of the way now. 175, 176, and we're going to set an initial altitude of 5,000 feet. Whoops, wrong way. There we go. So I've got my altimeter set, but I have done pretty much nothing else in this plane. I'll just say, because we aren't really going to have that much time, we're going to take the ILS runway 35 in College Station. So we're going to get to College Station, to this CLL NDB. This is a navigational beacon. And then we're going to come here to this Rowdy thing at 2,000 feet or above, within 15 nautical miles of Rowdy. And then we're going to turn around and come in for this landing on runway 35. So then we'll land here. We'll probably make this Bravo taxiway to get onto hotel and come into terminal. But otherwise, we can go all the way to the end of the runway. That's plenty of runway for a little jet like us. We can just have, land wherever we want on it. We don't have any stress. And then over here, we can take Foxtrot over to the terminal if we can't get off at Bravo. So let's go back over here. And I'm just going to initiate the position here. And we are at KDFW. Put in our flight plan. So from KDFW to Kilo Charlie Lima Lima. Alternate, we're going to put in Houston, although we will not need it because the weather is good and this is a flight simulator. And we're going to leave from 17 right. And this is a real flight, by the way. This is a real thing that goes, this is Envoy, ENY, Envoy 3768. I've taken this flight many times. It's very, very weird. So because it's so weird, we also have a very weird flight plan. It's very, very short. You don't really put anything in. So we're going to select the RDS 7 departure, and then we're going to go immediately to our arrival, the ILS 35. Transition at Charlie Lima Lima. Execute. We'll look in the legs page because I think there's going to be a little bit of discontinuity here, which there is. So yeah, we'll just go straight from Ardia to CLL. And at Rowdy, let's say we want 2,500 feet at CLL. And I'm going to just put in, we've got a really low cruising altitude here. This is 15,000 feet. That's extremely low for even a regional jet. Like, it's because it's just such a short flight. You don't really have time to get up. So basically we're going to get up to our cruising altitude relatively quickly, and then we're just going to sit there for about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back down. So this looks pretty good. We've got our missed approach already loaded into the system as well, and if that happens, which it should not, and hopefully will not. Let's go to the plan mode. We'll zoom in here. Oops, zoom in, yes. And MFD advance, and we'll look here. There's Trex, Dalby, Neeps, Ardia. Then here's CLL, and we've got our 2,500 feet already selected in there. And then Rowdy, we're going to do our little turn, procedural turn to come into runway 35. And then you got your missed approach thing loaded in as well, but hopefully we will not need to do that. So now we can start our check. So we've got our circuit breakers. They're all off. It looks like that's all fine. Nose wheel steering is off. Hydraulic pumps are off. Landing gear is down. Spoilers are retracted. Flaps are set and at 0 degrees. Radar is off. ADG manual release is stowed. The emergency flap switch is normal. Battery master switch is on. AC electrics is in use. We've got a ground power cart there. IRS is still set to nav. Emergency equipment, gears, safety pins, airplane documents, we'll say that we have all of that stuff. We're going to turn on hydraulic pump 3A. So we have some hydraulic power now. We have finished our FMS initialization here. That should be fine for us. And let's just set a speed here because it says that we have a maximum of 240 knots. So let's, just because this does not have an auto throttle, and I'll explain what that is in a bit, I'm going to put it at 230 so that I have a little bit of room to do some overspeed if I have to. Or not have to, but if I'm done. And I've got my heading selected and my altitude selected. Very good. So FO is out doing the cabin inspection and the walk around and all that stuff. We've already tested our oxygen masks on the first flight of the day. Auto warning panel is all fine. So electrical power panel. We'll turn on the DC service. We've got the AC battery master on, AC power on, IDGs are guarded and off, and all generators are on auto. External lights panel, we're going to turn on, oops, not our beacon, our nav. At night, we would turn on the logo, but people can see us because it's bright daylight. Everything should be fine. Fuel panel. Boost pumps are off, and the crossflow is in auto. Let me scoot over here. Bleed air panel is normal, auto, ISOL open, both engines. The APU is going to remain off for now. Start panel, everything is disengaged, nothing is on, that's good. We're going to check all of these, so auto, on, auto, auto, And then let me look at the hydraulics page. We should have hydraulic pressure. Yes, from 3A. And as soon as the engines turn on, then these other guys should also be working. And we will get rid of some of the warnings that we have here. We'll go back to stat. Now, where were we? Start panel, hydraulic panel, ELT switch is armed. Cabin pressure panel. This is something we have to do. Just in case there is a missed approach, we want to have our cabin altitude set to the landing elevation that we are right now so that we can come back to DFW and not have like some sort of weird pressure problem. So we've got the landing elevation set to 500 feet. When we take off and get into cruise, we will then turn that to the landing elevation of College Station. Air conditioning panel, the packs are off, recirc fan is on, everything is on auto, and we'll leave the air conditioning for the aft cargo off at the moment. Anti-ice, everything is off, and we'll turn the wind shield heat to low and leave the probes off for now. Emergency LTS switch is armed, and we'll turn on the no smoking sign. Standby compass is checked, all of that as well. Nose to our ceiling is still off, and the clock is set. We'll change this actually to local time. Instrument panels are good. We have some notes here, but they should be going away in just a little bit. Upper pedestal, landing gear down, horn guarded and locked. Anti-skid is armed. Let's do this bay.
Overheat.
That works. Warn fail works. Engine sync to N1. Indicator lights bright. Ground proximity locked, guarded and off. Then we've got our pitch and roll disconnect stowed. Flaps and spoilers retracted. Throttle in shut off. Thrust reversers off. Ground lift dumping auto. Normally we would set our radio tuning panels to do like a, make sure that we can come back and go land again at DFW, but I'm not going to spend the time doing that because this is a simulator and we are not going to have an engine failure. Now we are going to, actually we can turn off the ATC here for a second. We're going to engage our trims, Mach trim, stabilizer trim, Mach trim, and turn on the yaw damper. And the source select panel, everything is to norm. So now we can turn on the passenger seatbelt signs and the landing elevation we just set. Altimeter I have already set before I started recording. The FMS is checked and set. IRS is set in nav. Radio and nav aids, we'll say we've set those. We're going to set the ones when we come into College Station during the cruise phase. And we did a takeoff briefing. So personal electronic devices off. We're going to turn on the APU, which you can see right here. So the APU is the auxiliary power unit. Right now it is, revving up. It's a turbine engine. The temperature is coming on and the rotations per minute are increasing a little bit. And this thing is back here. It's this little guy. It's basically only on when you're on the ground. It helps you to start the engines. You've got a little bit of an air intake over here. But when you're flying, you turn it off because it's just a waste of fuel. Like you can get these engines should be able to provide power to your airplane. So, APU is good. We seem to be starting. Once we get to 99%, for 2 seconds, we should have electrics. And there we are. So APU is blue. It's providing power to our buses. And as soon as we start the engines, they will be providing that, and then we can turn off the APU. So that's all good. The takeoff data is set. Doors, let's close and lock them.
cabin is secure. All passengers are aboard.
You can get rid of the ground power cart
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the captain and crew, welcome aboard.
and the wheel trucks.
We hope you enjoy flying with us. Before takeoff, we would like to encourage all passengers to watch our cabin
Beacons on.
safety features of the aircraft.
Now, fuel pumps we're going to turn on. And we're going to look at the fuel page. We've got all our fuel. Fuel pumps are engaged. So we should be ready to push back now. Hydraulic pumps are on in auto, and we're going to turn off our parking brake. So now we can push back, and we can start engine 2. We're going to wait for the N2 to get up to about 20%. Hello. Okay. 20%. Now we're going to take it out of the fuel off and put it to idle. And you'll see the N2 increasing, the temperature will slightly increase, and the oil pressure will increase until there's ignition. And then the temperature should increase rather rapidly. There's ignition. Oil pressure is increasing as well. And that's engine 2 turning on. Good. Let's take things off.
Please pay attention as we display the safety features and procedures of the aircraft in case of an emergency. During an emergency, please remain in your seats with your seatbelt fastened and your seats in the upright
So,
position.
I'm going to turn on the parking brake again.
Cabin pressure, breathing masks will drop from the ceiling and should be placed over your head. If there is smoke in the cabin during the
Stabilized.
evacuation of the aircraft, the
Left
walkway
engine.
emergency lights will display to the exits, which are located here and here. In case of an extreme emergency landing, you'll be instructed to get into the brace position, which is executed by placing your head between your knees with your hands over your head. We would also like to remind you that you should turn off all electronic devices. We thank you for paying attention during this brief
20%.
presentation.
Flight idle. And now, same thing happens. I'm going to turn on my recognition and taxi lights. Now we're just going to wait for this engine to stabilize. Pull up my electrical panel. You can see that the engine generator is supplying this with power, and now this engine 1 is also supplying power. So now we can turn off the APU. Stop. Turn off fuel. Step. Okay. So, electrics are checked. Generators are all on auto. Bleed valves on auto. And I'm going to turn our packs on. There we go. APU is off. Anti-ice. I'm going to turn on the probes at this point. And nose wheel steering is now armed. Okay, so let's release the parking brake, and we can now head over. So once again, we're going to take the Kilo 11 onto Lima. I'm going to turn left onto taxiway Lima. And I have turned off all of the, other AI traffic or the other players or something, just because I don't really want to deal with that right now. But normally there would be all sorts of planes landing and moving around, and we'd have to deal with traffic. And at this point, we would have already asked, permission to take the wrong one? No, I think this is good. Anyway, we would have had to get permission to even leave the gate and turn on our engines. Yes, we are on taxiway Lima. And what we really want to do is have a little bit fast, but I think that's okay. We want to be going at a ground speed of around 15 knots or so in this guy when we're taxiing. It's a pretty cute plane. So in real life, this is actually an Embraer 145, I think. And it is a competitor, yeah, ERJ 145. It's a competitor to the CRJs. And American Eagle used to have CRJ 700s. Some American Eagle operators do. In contrast to American Airlines, American Eagle actually has a bunch of regional companies that are contracted to provide like regional service, and certain ones of those, like Mesa Airlines or something, they might be flying as American Eagle. They're contracted by American Eagle to fly these regional routes, but they have their own employees and their own equipment and stuff, and they're going to be flying maybe a CRJ 700. So there are such planes. This is a realistic plane to be taking on this route, but actually it's the competitor kind of plane to this one. And there's another plane that's newer that is called the CRJ 550, and it's the exact same size, but it has like a first class that is much bigger. And the reason for that is that there are things in the pilot's contracts that say that they can only fly so many people. So, and that's to prevent the company from giving away all of the flying to the little regional jets, which get paid worse and have, the pilots don't want to be stuck at a regional airline usually for the rest of their careers. So they made the 550 to help United and American and other big airlines have a regional jet that works well and does all the things that they want, but does not go over capacity in terms of the number of passengers. So here we are on taxiway Lima. This is our runway right next to us. And we can see we've got a little bit of a crosswind. We're going to be taking off down this way. So that's okay. Does it say how much? 11 knots. That's not a huge crosswind. We will be fine. This is Terminal D. This is when I come back to the United States, when I fly back to Germany, I always leave out of usually one of these gates right here in an American Airlines 787 Dreamliner. I think 787-800 maybe? We're going a little fast, but I don't care. So, slats and flaps, we're going to set them at 8. So I've done that, 8. And now they're indicating at 8 as well. Flight controls, we'll say that we checked those. I don't really have desire to do that at the moment. Trim, let's see what the plane, I will actually brake just a little bit so that we don't fly off the taxiway. So trim should be at 7.3. I'm going to set this to 7.3. 1, 2, 3. Very good. Here we are. And thrust reversers are armed, just in case we have a failed takeoff. And flight instruments checked. Brake temp is checked, and all of that is green. So we're going to turn here.
Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has advise that we are now cleared for takeoff.
So we'll hold at runway 17 right. Very good. Put on the parking brake. And we turn on our landing lights and our strobe lights. Put our fuel cross flow to manual so that we don't have any kind of weird things going on. Our flight attendant is clearly already advised that we're about to take off. Turn on our transponder TCAS thing. Hold on. There we go. Radar we don't really need, and let's check our crew alert system. Everything is good. So we'll take off the old parking brake, give a little bit of thrust. We've got a ton of runway for this little plane, so I don't think I even need to brake. Basically what's going to happen, we're going to go up to 124 knots, at which point we'll rotate. At 135 knots, we have to continue with the takeoff even if we have an engine failure. Then we'll just get airborne, turn around, and we'll come back and land, but that's not going to happen to us. Okay, so I will just take off from here because we've got enough runway. If something weird happens, we can still stop. We're up to 60% N1, go to Toga. Rotate. Oh. Gear up because positive rate. And now I'm going to encourage nav and speed mode. And autopilot engaged. Oops. And 30 knots for now. Okay. And I'm going to pull up one level of flaps. Pull up another level of flaps. So here we are. We're getting up to Trex. I'm actually going to bring us up above 5,000 feet because we look like we're going to be fine there. We can go all the way up to our very low cruising altitude of 15,000 feet. And let me get speed mode at, whoops, see, I've kind of messed up here. Talking and doing all this at the same time is hard. We've just really broken the speed limit and we're not supposed to do that. That's okay. That's why it's a simulator. So, there's DFW. My house is over here. So we're going to put our fuel cross flow back to auto, and leads are set. Everything is fine with that. Let me pull back on the throttle still a little bit more. Like, it's really not good that we busted the speed limit, but that's okay. Thrust reversers off. There we go. We're back in the speed limit. Yay! So here we are at Trex. And we're well above 5,000 feet, which is fine. Then we're going to proceed to Dalby and Neeps. 240 knots or below. We are now below 240 knots, which is good. It was only a momentary speed limit break. Normally you'd have first of all, you wouldn't have a mouse wheel. You would just be able to go grab this stuff. And you'd have a co-pilot who is going to be helping you deal with everything. Suburbia. I do not miss that, to be honest with you. Absolutely do not miss it. So, I said I would tell you guys about the auto throttle. So normally, most like passenger jets, commercial jets, do have an auto throttle function, and that kind of functions a little bit like your cruise control in a car, but of course everything in an airplane is much more intense and can kill you much easier than a car can. It will automatically adjust to keep a speed. So you can say like, yeah, I want to go at 250 knots. And in fact, let's say that they've told us that we can go faster because we are now coming up on NEEPs. I think they're fine with us, going into cruise speed. So we will do that. But normally you would be able to engage in auto thrust, auto throttle, and this would automatically adjust. It would go up to climb speed.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now serving sandwiches.
No, you are not. On this flight, they barely have enough time to give you a Coke. But it would be able to automatically kind of adjust itself to keep the speeds that you want. And most commercial jets these days have that. This one does not, which means that it's much more labor intensive for the pilots. They've really got to look at what their speed is doing and kind of have an idea of what's going on the entire flight. Obviously all pilots have to have an idea of what's going on the entire flight, but they're not usually, just like if you're driving your car without cruise control, it's a lot more tiring because you're constantly looking down at that speedometer and adjusting your what do you call that? Your speed to make sure that you keep and maintain your speed. And it's much easier to overspeed, or maybe if you're going up a hill to not realize it and suddenly you're going way too slow and everyone's angry at you. So the same thing applies here. So now that we're up here, we're not really going to be in the air that long before we have to get to College Station. So let's, first of all, I want to try to inhibit the FMS from auto-tuning things. I don't know if that's the right button to do that, but I think it is. I've only had this plane for a few days, so I've had to learn a lot of stuff recently. But I want to get this is 133.3. I want to get that in here because that is the there we go. That's the VOR that we want to look at for College Station. Then the ADF, we want that at 260. This is annoying that it has these decimals. It makes it, the software developer really needs to change this because it just turns way too slowly. And I don't know of very many ADFs that even have a decimal after them. It seems like they always are just 3 numbers. We want to get this down to 260 so that we have a good sense of that. There we go. Whoops, 260. So then we're going to put on a bearing here, whoops, for ADF1. And this will give us the distance we are away from rowdy ADF right here. And this thing, in real life, you would listen to the Morse code, and you would know, okay, it's making this sound, so it must be the rowdy, I must be tuned to the right one. Then the other thing we want to put in here is the 110.55 localizer. 110.55. So we'll get to CLL. Then we will continue on to Rowdy. Within 15 nautical miles of Rowdy, we're going to turn around and we'll be at 2,000 feet or above at this localizer signal. We're going to start our descent, and then we'll land at runway 35. Pull back on the throttle just a little bit. We don't really need to be using this much thrust. Synchronize our heading. So you can see we've got a rather large, well, it's not horrible, but we've got a crosswind here, 49 knots, coming directly from our right side. So it's pushing us off course. So in order to fly this way, our nose has to be pointing this way. We're actually, if there were no wind, we would be flying over here, but we're moving this way. So there's a little bit of a, we're kind of moving off to the side like this, even though we're pointing over here. And that is a Texas landscape if I ever saw one. There's a bunch of fields, little man-made lakes everywhere. The other thing we can do is take a look at the airport elevation. We're at 321 feet. So I'm just going to pull this up and adjust this to 320 feet landing elevation so that we won't be over or under pressured when we arrive. So at the descent, we've just checked the landing elevation. We'll check our fuel again. And our fuel should be fine. Yeah, we've got plenty of fuel left. Our radar we don't need because it's a nice clear day. Our crew alert system, we'll check that and make sure that's good. Our landing data is going to be set. Oh, that's the other thing I need to do. Let's look at our minimums here. So let's put in 760 feet here. Or actually, we're doing the ILS, so we can do 511 feet. So, decision altitude, put this in 520, let's say. Okay. So that's the point at which, if we do not see the runway and we're not lined up and everything isn't good to go, at 511 feet, or in our case, we're just going to say 520 feet, just a little bit higher than that, then we have to do the go-around procedure. But I do not think that that's going to be a problem because, as you can see, everything is nice and clear here. There are barely any clouds. It should be absolutely fine. So when we get to the top of descent, which we can see if we can see that here, here it is. We're actually coming up on it rather quickly now, in about 35 miles. So here's 20 nautical miles, here's 40 nautical miles. In about 35 nautical miles, we will start our descent. Maybe a little bit earlier than that, just to make sure that we, get there in time. And when I get down to College Station to make the turn, I want to already be mostly configured, right? Like, I want to just turn around and have everything set up so that I can just glide down towards the runway. So Around 200 knots, we're going to engage our flaps, first flaps. So you can see that over here. There's flaps 1, 8, 20, 30, and 45. And that'll really slow us down. So what happens is, when you engage the flaps, here's the slats. This little leading edge of the wing kind of comes out and down a little bit. It tilts down. And then these flaps back here, these both go down as well, and they can go down rather drastically. On a bigger aircraft, these landing gear, when they go down, it would cause a lot more drag. On this little jet, it doesn't really do that much to slow you down. But if you were having a bigger plane, you would actually really notice that when the landing gear goes down, it would make a big difference in how the plane flies. Now, granted, it would make a big difference in how this one flies too. It's just not as noticeable a difference. Then when we get, in line to the ILS, we're going to switch the nav source to the localizer that we've tuned in over here, which is 110.55. Yep. And then it should be able to help guide us into the runway. So I'm going to set up a little bit of a target altitude here. We said we wanted to be around 2,500 feet here. So let me just put that in now. We're at altitude hold mode on our autopilot at the moment, so we shouldn't be changing when we change this. But I'll put this down to 2,500 feet. What does that say? 2,800. There we go. Oh, whoops. In all my talking, I forgot to turn off the landing lights. You can do that once you're at 1,500 feet. I also forgot to tell the poor passengers they can get up. But they can't get up for much longer. So here we are, getting close to the top of descent. Zoom out a little bit. You can see what we're going to be doing over here. So, I guess, I want to make sure that I have enough time. I don't really know this plane super well yet, so I'm going to engage vertical speed. And we're going to say to go down like this. You can see the vertical speed indicator is telling us what we're doing. And I'm going to pull back on the throttle a bit, because otherwise we're going to really speed up because we're descending. And we'll just start a kind of relatively slow descent. I'd like to go down to like maybe 250 knots so that we can reach a much slower speed by the time we hit our airport. So when we come in to land, this is a kind of calculation table, and this iPad helps me determine the speed that I want to be at. But we want our speed when we're coming in to land to be 132 knots. So around that, we don't want to be any lower than that, because that would mean that we might just kind of fall out of the sky. But if we can get down with all our configuration, everything good, at 132 knots, that would be Great. Pull back on the throttle just a little bit more, and I'm also going to increase our rate of descent just a little bit more. So here we are, we're at like 250 knots. I think we're still synced with our heading, but press that one more time. So you can see we want our course to be 166 degrees. Now, right now our heading is actually 168, but that's because of the wind. In any case, we want actually, like, our plane should be going at 166. Then we reach, 15 nautical miles away from this beacon. We're going to turn around and go heading 346. And at that point, we will begin our descent when we get to this localizer signal. I'm going to pull back even more, increase our descent a little bit more as well. And we'll just zoom in a little bit on the map, because we're going to be getting into a part where we need to focus on our turns. And we should actually see, I'm trying to think, I think on the right, when we come in for the turn, for the landing, we should see the Bush School right next to the airport. We'll probably see more of the parking lots than the actual building itself, but yeah, that'll be where I'm studying. Okay, we've passed 10,000 feet, so we're going to turn on these. We're going to tell the passengers to get their asses in their seats. Let me pull back to all the way to idle here. Just because it won't be bad if we get down to like 200 knots. We're going to want to have that going on a little bit here. Actually, I want the War 1 going on here. I don't know. Is that the airport right there? I think it is. Yes. I believe that is our airport. Very good. Now, I'm going to do this, switch to heading mode for a second, so that I can switch my nav source to Mach 1. There we go. So we want to be heading in here, course of 166. 167 seems to be fine because we're trying to stay on this. You know, there's still a little bit of crosswind. So if we're heading a little bit to the right, that is fine by me. And in fact, we'll go down to 2,000 feet. Correct just a little bit. I don't want to get blown off too far to the east here. Six, and then we're going to go to heading 346 within 15 nautical miles of this ILS. Why is it doing that? It's weird. I do have this tuned right, don't I? 110.55. Yep. Okay. So, I'm going to put down one slats flaps.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to land. Please remain seated until we have stopped.
Well, we're not quite that about to land, my friend. We still have some procedural turns to do. But, yes, we are now flying over the airport. And, oops, let me make sure that there we go. So I'm going to increase the thrust a little bit. I'm going to put down another set of flaps. So the Bush School, I think, is right here. So Kind of hard to tell. We'll see in a second. Yep, and we're going to want our heading to be 346. So we're going to keep our eye on this. We cannot pass, it says we're not allowed to pass 15 nautical miles. So we have to stay within 15 nautical miles of this localizer, but I think that'll be fine. That's the Bush School, right over here. Bush Library and Museum, and there's this cute park over there. That's Texas A&M, but the Bush School is kind of on its own over here. Okay, I'm going to increase the throttle a little bit more. We'll put another set of flaps in. We're at flaps 20 now. And let me put in flaps 30, or 45, I mean. No, 30, yeah. And we'll lower the gear. And we'll put in our last set of flaps. So now, you can see, we've got all this extra drag. So our engines are actually working quite a bit. We've got our slats down, our flaps are really all the way down. It's going to help give us lift at a slower speed, and it's also going to help us to slow down a little bit. Okay. So, what did it say? 346. I'm going to go a little bit further out because we're allowed to keep going until put a little bit more speed in here. We're allowed to keep going until 15 nautical miles. So around 10 nautical miles, I think I'm going to kind of turn around here. And you can see we're basically just going parallel. So this is showing that the localizer is wanting us to go this way, and here's where we would need to be. We need to be a little bit to the right in order to be lined up with it, but I think we're going to be fine there. 8 nautical miles. And now I will think about going to 346, heading 346. Let me get to about 10 nautical miles. Just so that I have plenty of time to get everything set up. I don't really know this plane super well. Oops, pull back on the speed a little bit. But you can see we're getting pushed off a little bit. We're not actually going this heading, but that's okay. So, heading. Let me just, oops, make sure that we're going up a little bit. intercept this ILS. So we want this to be in the middle, and then we'll go into 346, and then we can initiate approach mode. Okay, we're a little bit slow, so I'm going to push up the throttle a little bit. But we're still within 15 nautical miles, so all of this is fine. And we're the only person out here, so ATC is happy with us. Okay. 346. I think I'm going to get this interception just perfect. Indeed, pretty much. So, now I'm going to activate approach mode. Once we get kind of, you okay? Now we're right on target with our speed. This is exactly what we wanted. Okay, lock 1 is engaged. So we're on the localizer. The plane knows that we're just a little bit off. The wind is pushing us off course a little bit. We've got a crosswind here of 22 knots. So, you know, that's not nothing. It is something that we will notice as we're going on here. I'm just going to slow down just slightest bit. Now, unfortunately, I don't have rudder pedals, so this might not be the smoothest landing, but we'll see what we can do. Okay. Pull back on the throttle a little bit more. So we're now just gliding in. I'm going to try to stay as close as we can to our VREF speed. But at the same time, you don't want to, you know, get below that. So it's careful. You have to be really careful with this auto throttle so you're not falling out of the sky. Makes it a little bit more difficult to have the crosswind because you can see our plane is kind of jostling a little bit, which is fine, but something to be aware of. So we're nicely lined up. That's Texas A&M right there. This is the Bush School, I think, right here or something. Maybe it's right there. Okay. We're about to reach our minimums, but we can do this. So, in fact, I'm going to turn off the autopilot right now. And we're just going to guide this in. Pull up the nose just a little bit. You can see we have, these are poppy lights. There's 2 white, 2 red, which is what we want to see. We're neither too high nor too low. We're right on the glide path, coming down about 3 degrees.
400.
We're right on the speed that we want to be. Coming down, we're going to aim for that touchdown zone. I think we're going to miss it just a little bit, but that's okay.
Sync rate.
No sync rate.
100. Sync rate.
You're happy. Everything is good.
50.
Pull back on the throttle.
30. 20. 10.
Thrusters and reverse thrusters engaged. A little bit off because of the wind, but I think we're fine. We are going all the way over to Foxtrot, it looks like. Or almost. Or did we? I don't know, it looks like we got Bravo. Oh no, we didn't. Whoops.
Please remain seated until the aircraft has come to a complete stop.
Okay, that was alright. I do want rudder pedals. I think that's going to be like a birthday thing or something. It takes a lot of practice to fly these things. There's a lot to think about. Thank you, flight attendant. Okay. So, landing lights off. Strobes off. Pitot heat off. And we want to start up our APU. And we can put our TCAS to standby. There we go. Lights and probes are off. Oh yeah. Good. Turn off our slats and flaps. We got our ground spoilers back to where they need to be. So, cleaned up aircraft coming into College Station. And here we are. It's such a tiny little airport. This actually belongs to the university. Coming in a little bit fast here. That's okay. Okay. Hello. Whoops. A little too much brake there. Good. Parking brake engaged. So now we're going to shut off the seatbelt signs, and we're going to turn off our reverse thrust and turn off our thrust levers. Well, let's make sure that, yes, APU is on and happy, so we're not going to lose all power when we do this. Shut down the engines. The airplane will beep at us because it doesn't like that. Turn off the fuel pumps. Make sure that the anti-ice is off, so we're going to turn our windshield warming off. Beacon and nav can turn off. Nose wheel steering off. And now we are set, so we can put in the chocks, put on a ground power unit.
Door.
Ladies and gentlemen, the door is open. Please make your way to the exit and please make sure you
We'll
have
turn off
all
our
your
hydraulic
personal
pumps.
items and carry-on luggage.
There we are. We made it. So, let's look at, this is actually, somebody just made this. This is not like a professional thing that I bought, but home of the George Bush Presidential Library and Museum. That is right where my school is, the Bush School of Government. But it's kind of cute that somebody made this. I don't know. This is more, I mean, you know, it's just some guy made this thing. But this is more or less what it looks like. Like the actual parking lot is like this. This is where the roads are. And then you get on this little highway. And yeah, you can get picked up from the front over here, from the front of this terminal. This over here, hold on, let me speed this up. This little section over here is actually a little general aviation base thing, so you can, you know, take flying lessons or whatever over there. And this is my school, right next to the airport. So I think this is going to be the parking lot that I park in. And this is the Presidential Library. Now these buildings are kind of auto-gen. This is not actually what it looks like. These buildings I kind of imported from Google Maps. They're not super high quality, but you kind of have a better idea of what the campus looks like. But you can see this is what the rest of the campus is. And then my little section, the George Bush School of Government, is off on its own. It's got this cute little lake and walking trails over here and these are the parking lots, so I'll probably be parking over here, I think. And then this is the George Bush Library Museum, and this is the school. So that's where I will be. Yeah. And we'll turn around. And here's our airport. And there we are. Okay. See you guys later.